As the day gently fades into night and the world around you begins to settle into a peaceful hush, it's time to welcome you to Get Sleepy Cozy, your sanctuary for relaxation and tranquility. Take a moment to unwind, dear listeners, as we guide you on a soothing journey into the land of dreams. Picture yourself in a cozy corner, wrapped in the warmth of your favorite blanket, with the soft glow of candlelight dancing in the darkness. With each breath, feel yourself sinking deeper into comfort, letting go of the cares of the day and allowing your mind to drift on the gentle currents of imagination. Here, in this moment of stillness, you are free to let your thoughts wander and your worries melt away. As we embark on this journey together, let the gentle rhythm of our words wash over you like a lullaby, easing you into a state of serene relaxation. Close your eyes and surrender to the embrace of sleep, knowing that you are safe, you are supported, and you are loved. So, dear listeners, snuggle up tight and prepare to drift off into a world of wonder and relaxation as we invite you to listen to a bedtime story with Get Sleepy Cozy. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the magic of storytelling carry you away into a peaceful slumber. Veil of the Valkyrie, Chapter 1. The summoning in the northern reaches of the known world, where the cold winds kiss the mighty fjords, dance like spirits in the midnight sky. There lay a small village, untouched by the machinations of kings and the ambitions of empires. Here lived Astrid, a young woman with eyes as clear as the winter skies and a spirit as indomitable as the ancient mountains that shelter her home. Astrid was no ordinary maiden. Her days were spent not weaving at the loom or tending to the hearth, but training with sword and shield. From her father, a warrior of some renown in his youth, she had learned the art of battle, a skill she honed with a passion that surpassed even the fiercest of her peers. On the eve of the Midsummer Festival, as the village prepared to celebrate the longest day of the year, a strange whispering wind began to blow. It was not the cold northerly gust that brought the snows, but a warm breeze that carried with it the scent of blossoms never before smelled in this frigid land. Astrid, curious and unafraid, followed the calling of this mysterious zephyr as it wound through the woods, leading her to an ancient clearing she had never seen before. There, beneath the watchful gaze of the old gods carved into the surrounding trees, stood a figure of ethereal beauty, cloaked in a robe of shimmering gold. The figure, turning to face her, revealed herself to be none other than Freya, the goddess of love and war, revered in the sagas and whispered about in reverence by the firesides of the north. Child of the northern winds, Freya's voice was like the melody of spring thawing the winter's ice. The realms of gods and humans alike face a darkness that creeps at the edges of the worlds, threatening to undo the weaves of fate itself. Astrid, undaunted by the presence of the divine, knelt before Freya. My goddess, why do you come to me, a simple warrior with no fame to my name? Freya smiled, a gesture that lit the clearing with a warmth that belied the encroaching dusk. It is not always the mightiest sword that turns the tide of battle, but the bravest heart. You are descended from the Valkyries, Astrid, chosen by the fates to lead this quest. The goddess extended her hand, from which a light grew, shaping itself into a magnificent sword, its blade as clear as crystal. Take this, Slayer, forged from the tears of the stars. Gather your allies, for you shall need them to face the shadows that lurk in the abyss. As the celestial weapon settled into her hands, Astrid felt a surge of power, a connection to her ancestors that coursed through her veins like fire. With a resolve steeled by the weight of her destiny, She rose, her path clear. I will not fail you, Freya. I will gather the mightiest warriors, and together we shall turn back this darkness. Freya nodded, her eyes filled with a stormy pride. Go forth, daughter of the Valkyries, and let the realms sing of your journey. With that, the goddess vanished, leaving behind the whispering winds, which now seemed to murmur Astrid's name. With reverence and hope, Astrid turned homeward, the weight of her destiny on her shoulders, but her heart alight with the fire of the gods. As the midsummer sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, Astrid knew this was the dawn of her greatest saga. The story of Astrid and the Veil Slayer was just beginning. As the village of Njordhelm swelled with the jubilation of the Midsummer Festival, Astrid moved among her people, a spectral figure against the revelry. The villagers danced around bonfires, their laughter echoing under the starlit sky. Yet Astrid's thoughts were ensnared by her encounter with the goddess Freya. The weight of the celestial sword at her side, Veil Slayer, was a constant reminder of the daunting quest laid before her. The Midsummer Festival, a celebration of life and light, seemed a stark contrast to the darkness that threatened the realms. Astrid's heart beat with a mix of dread and determination as she watched the flames leap towards the heavens, as if trying to sear away the coming night. As the night deepened, Freya's promise echoed in her mind. Gather your allies, for you shall need them to face the shadows. Astrid knew she could not undertake this journey alone. She needed warriors who were not only formidable in battle, but also steadfast in the face of unimaginable darkness. Her gaze fell upon Einar, the village seer, whose eyes flickered with the knowledge of worlds beyond their own. His abilities to foresee events were legendary, and his counsel had guided the chieftains of Nordhelm for decades. Einar caught Astrid's intense gaze and approached, his staff tapping rhythmically against the earth. Astrid, daughter of Bjorn, your eyes hold a storm. What weighs upon your heart? Einar's voice was low, mixing with the crackling of the fire. With the crowd around, Astrid leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper. I have been chosen by Freya herself to lead a quest against a darkness that threatens all realms. I need warriors. Einar, will you join me? Einar's aged face, usually so serene, tightened with concern. He glanced at Veil Slayer, its blade shimmering even in the dim light. The goddess has chosen well, though the path she sets before you is fraught with peril. Yes, I will join you, Astrid. We will need more than my visions to navigate this darkness. Together, they turned their attention to the festivities, seeking out those who might share their courage and fate. Astrid's eyes next found Signy, a shield maiden whose prowess in battle was unmatched. Signy was laughing heartily, arm wrestling a burly warrior twice her size. Even as she struggled, her eyes sparkled with the fire of competition. Astrid approached, waiting for the match to end. Signy triumphant as usual. Clapping the shield maiden on the shoulder, Astrid spoke with a commanding yet respectful tone. Signy, daughter of Halvor, I require your strength. Will you stand with me to face a darkness as foretold by Freya? Signy's joviality sobered as she took in Astrid's serious mien and the legendary blade at her side. You've always been one for the old stories, Astrid. But if you say the goddess calls, then how can I refuse? Lead, and I will follow. With Einar and Signy by her side, Astrid felt the first stirrings of hope. Yet, two more must join their ranks to complete the circle that would venture into the unknown. Her eyes searched the crowd, pondering who else might possess the courage and the skill to face the darkness alongside them. The festival continued around them, a merry contrast to the gravity of their secret conclave. Yet, In the heart of the celebration, the seeds of a formidable alliance were sown, destined to battle against the encroaching shadows. As the night gave way to the pale light of dawn, Astrid knew that their journey was just beginning, a journey that would test them all to their very cores. The pale light of dawn cast a silver glow over Nordhelm as Astrid, Einar, and Signy stood at the edge of the village, overlooking the vast wilderness that stretched beyond. They awaited the arrival of the other chosen warriors, the remaining members needed to complete their fellowship. It was then that Freya appeared once more, her presence heralding a gust of wind that smelled of spring and the distant seas. She materialized before them, her aura so bright, it seemed the sun had risen just to catch a glimpse of her glory. The villagers, still gathered from the night's festivities, fell to their knees, awed by the sight of the goddess. Brave warriors of Njordhelm, Freya's voice rang out, clear and compelling. Astrid, daughter of the Valkyries, is bestowed with a grave task. The shadows that seek to unmake our worlds grow bolder, and only through unity and courage can this darkness be vanquished. Turning to Astrid, Freya bestowed upon her a cloak woven from the night sky, shimmering with stars. This mantle will shield you from the eyes of your enemies and bring you comfort in the darkest times. To Einar, she handed a staff carved from an ancient tree, its bark alive with the whispers of the earth. This staff will guide your path and reveal truths hidden to mortal eyes. Signy received a shield, emblazoned with the rune of protection. Its surface gleamed with an ethereal light, unyielding and strong as the mountains themselves. Let no evil pass where you stand guard, brave shield maiden, with the celestial gifts bestowed. Two more figures approached. Bjorn, a cunning hunter known for his unmatched skills with the bow, and Leif, a noble smith whose crafted weapons held the might of a forged fire. Astrid addressed her newly formed band with a leader's resolve. With Freya's blessing, we are to journey beyond the realms known to us, to face a darkness that threatens all of creation. Each of you has been chosen not just for your skills, but for the strength of your spirit. Bjorn, with eyes as sharp as his arrows, nodded. I've tracked beasts through forests darker than the night. Whatever awaits, I am ready. Leif, whose hands were as strong as the metals he wrought, added, my hammer has shaped iron and steel. Let it now shape our destiny. Freya smiled upon them all, her eyes reflecting a storm of emotions. You are the light that shall pierce the shadows. Remember, the bonds you forge along this journey will be your greatest strength. With a final nod, the goddess form dissolved into a cascade of light, leaving behind a renewed sense of purpose among the warriors. They turned eastward, where the sky hinted at the coming of true dawn, and the winds whispered of paths untrodden. As the villagers returned to their homes, hearts filled with stories of gods and heroes, Astrid and her companions prepared for departure. They gathered their supplies, checked their weapons, and shared a moment of silent camaraderie. With the first rays of the sun cresting the horizon, they set out, their steps firm and their hearts alight with the fire of purpose. The road ahead was fraught with unknown dangers, but with Freya's blessings, they were more than mere mortals. They were the chosen bearers of light against the encroaching darkness. The chill of the morning air was brisk as Astrid and her chosen companions assembled at the village's edge, under the towering old oaks that had witnessed countless farewells. Their figures, silhouetted against the awakening sky, were a testament to the courage and resolve that pulsed through the veins of those destined for greatness. Astrid surveyed her comrades, each a warrior of renowned skill and unwavering spirit. Einar, with his ancient staff, seemed to draw the wisdom of the earth itself. Signy, her shield ready, exuded the fierce resolve of the storm. Bjorn, with bow in hand, possessed the quiet intensity of the forest's watchful guardian. And Leaf, his smith's hammer over his shoulder, bore the unyielding strength of forged iron. The villagers, stirred by the sight of Freya the day prior, had come to see off their heroes. Old tales spoke of such times when mortals would rise to meet the challenges set by gods, and now they bore witness to such a saga unfolding before their very eyes. Astrid stepped forward, her voice clear and resounding. This dawn marks not an ending, but a beginning. We journey not just for Jordhelm, but for all realms that hang in the balance. We carry with us the hopes and fears of every soul that yearns for light to triumph over darkness. The air seemed to thrum with the power of her words, and the villagers responded with a rousing cheer, their faith and pride in these warriors evident in their tear-filled eyes. Leaf, stepping beside Astrid, raised his hammer towards the rising sun. By the forge that heats the heart of the mountains, we shall not falter. We will return, bearing the dawn of a new era. Einar, ever the seer, nodded sagely. The paths we tread are woven with the threads of fate. Let us be the weavers, not merely the thread. Signy adjusted her shield, her gaze steely and determined. Let the shadows beware, for we bring the light, and Bjorn, ever silent, simply knocked an arrow to his bow, his readiness an unspoken vow to protect his comrades unto the very ends of the earth. With no further words needed, Astrid led the way as they set out, their path veering into the dense woodlands that bordered their village. The trees stood tall and proud, their leaves whispering farewells and blessings to the warriors passing beneath their boughs. As the village faded to the distance, the reality of their quest began to settle in. They were to venture through realms unknown and face perils unspoken. Yet, the weight of Veilslayer at Astrid's side and the artifacts bestowed by Freya upon her companions served as constant reminders of their divine charge and the protection afforded by the gods. The journey through the woodlands was silent but for the sounds of nature and the soft tread of their boots upon the leaf-strewn path. Each warrior was lost in thought, contemplating the significance of the task at hand and the roles they were to play. By midday, they had reached the clearing known as Elder's Pass, where the trees parted to reveal the vastness of their journey ahead. Here, the real test would begin, as they would leave behind the familiar and step into legend. The air grew colder as they paused, taking a moment to survey the uncharted territories that stretched beyond. The sense of unity and shared destiny was palpable among them, a bond forged not by blood but by the shared commitment to a cause greater than themselves. With a final nod to each other, the five warriors resumed their march, stepping into the realms of myth and mystery, where their courage would be tested by fire and ice, shadow and light. As the first rays of dawn streaked the sky with hues of gold and crimson, the five companions stood at the threshold of Elder's Pass. Here, at the edge of known realms, the air was thick with the power of ancient magics and the whispered blessings of the gods. Before proceeding further, Astrid called a halt. She felt a profound need to invoke the favor of the Azar, the gods of the Norse pantheon, to ensure their protection and success. Forming a circle, the warriors joined hands, their spirits united in purpose and resolve. Astrid raised Veilslayer towards the sky, its crystal blade catching the morning light and casting prismatic rays across the clearing. Great gods of Asgard, we seek your blessings as we embark on this perilous quest. Lend us your strength, wisdom, and courage, she intoned, her voice resonant with the power of her lineage. The air around them shimmered as if the very atmosphere was listening, charged with anticipation. A gentle breeze arose, swirling around them, and in its wake, each warrior felt a surge of energy. It was as if the very essence of the Azar was responding, weaving their divine gifts into the fabric of their beings. Einar, with his staff grounded before him, felt his mind expand, visions of potential futures flickering before his eyes like the leaves of Yggdrasil. It was Odin's gift, the sight beyond sight, enhancing his seer's abilities to perceive threats and opportunities that lay on their path. Signy's shield pulsed with a vibrant light, a tangible barrier against the dark forces they would face. Freyja's own energy fortified it, imbuing the shield with a divine resilience that could withstand the mightiest of blows. Bjorn, quiet and observant, found his senses heightened, his eyes able to pierce through the deepest shadows. A gift from Uar, the god of archery. His arrows, now enchanted, would seek their mark with unerring accuracy, a crucial advantage against the dark entity's minions. Leif, his hammer in hand, felt the raw power of Thor flow through him, strengthening his muscles and his resolve. His hammer would not only forge weapons, but could also channel the thunder god's fury, capable of breaking enchantments and barriers erected by their foes. As the magical infusion subsided, Astrid spoke again, her voice steady and clear. We are armed not just with weapons, but with the power of the gods themselves. Let us go forth with their blessings shielding us from the darkness that seeks to devour the light. The circle broke, and each warrior felt a renewed vigor, their doubts replaced by a fierce determination to face whatever challenges awaited. Their path forward was fraught with unknowns, but the divine artifacts they bore were beacons of hope, symbols of their right to challenge the darkness. With the blessings of the Aesir coursing through them, the companions set out from Elder's Pass, their steps sure and their hearts light. The journey ahead would test them in ways they could scarcely imagine, but with the gods on their side, they felt invincible. The landscape began to change as they ventured further, the familiar woods giving way to a rugged terrain, veined with the scars of ancient battles and the remnants of forgotten magics. It was a land that whispered of secrets and sagas of heroes and monsters, and it was here that their true quest would begin. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows behind them, the companions moved forward, each step taking them deeper into the realms of legend and closer to their destiny. The day of departure had arrived with a quiet, solemn air. The dawn was muted, the sky a tapestry of brooding grays and silvers, reflecting the gravity of the task that lay ahead for Astrid and her companions. As they prepared to leave the familiar boundaries of Eldur's Pass and step into the unknown, the very air seemed to hold its breath, thick with the portent of their epic journey. Astrid stood at the forefront, Veilslayer in hand, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the sky met the untamed wilderness. The lands beyond were shrouded in mystery, spoken of only in whispered tales and ancient scrolls. It was here that the boundary between the realms of gods and men blurred, where the dark entity they sought lay in wait. The team assembled their gear, each piece imbued with the blessings of the Aesir. Einar adjusted his seer's robes, his staff humming softly with latent energy. Signy tested the weight of her shield, her expression one of steely resolve. Bjorn meticulously checked his quiver, ensuring each arrow was ready for swift release. Leif, his smith's hammer slung over his shoulder, shared a nod with Astrid, his eyes alight with the fire of anticipation. Before stepping forward, Astrid turned to her comrades. This journey will test us, not just in strength but in spirit, she said, her voice steady and inspiring. We carry with us the hopes of our village, the blessings of the gods, and the fate of the realms. Let us be worthy of these gifts. Nodding in agreement, the group formed a tight circle, hands clasped, their unity a silent vow to stand by each other against whatever perils they might face. With a final look back at the fading silhouette of Eldur's Pass, they turned and stepped into the dense fog that rolled over the land, a veil that seemed to separate the known from the nether. As they traversed the increasingly rugged terrain, the signs of the dark entity's influence grew more apparent. Trees twisted unnaturally, their branches clawing at the sky like desperate hands. The air grew colder, a chill that seemed to seep into the bones, and the light dimmed, as if the sun itself dared not venture too deep into these cursed lands. Yet, as they moved forward, an omen appeared that bolstered their spirits. High above, a falcon soared across the gray canvas of the sky, its flight steady and sure. Einar, interpreting this sign, smiled faintly. The falcon flies high and unafraid. It is a sign from the gods, a tree reminder that we are not alone in our quest. Heartened by this symbol of divine watchfulness, the companions pressed on, their resolve hardened like the steel of their weapons. The path before them twisted through shadowed valleys and over stark ridges, each step taking them deeper into the realm of legends, closer to the heart of darkness they sought to conquer. As the first day of their journey waned, the sky bled into deeper shades of twilight, and the first stars began to pierce the evening gloom. They made camp in a clearing, the land around them eerily silent, as if the natural world held its breath in the presence of those who dared to challenge fate. That night, under the watchful eyes of the gods, Astrid and her warriors gathered around a small fire, its flames a small bastion of light in the encroaching darkness. They spoke little, each lost in their thoughts, their hearts heavy with the weight of the coming days. But there was a thread of hope woven through their resolve, fortified by the divine blessings they carried. They were chosen not by chance but by destiny to stand against the darkness, and stand they would, whatever the cost. With the first light of dawn, they would continue their journey deeper into the realms of gods and monsters, where their mettle would be tested and their legends forged. Chapter 2. Through the realms, the dawn of their second day broke with a chorus of distant, otherworldly sounds, a faint echo of the cosmic symphony that was Yggdrasil, the great world tree that connected all the realms. As the sky lightened from the deep indigo of night to a softer blue, tinged with the pink of awakening, Astrid and her companions packed their sparse camp and set their sights northward. Their journey led them to the base of a gargantuan ash tree, its roots sprawling like natural highways into different realms. The bark was ancient and knotted, etched with runes that pulsed faintly with the lifeblood of the cosmos. It was said that to walk upon these roots was to travel through the very arteries of existence. And now, these 5 warriors were about to step onto that sacred path. Einar, with his staff held before him, chanted softly, invoking the protection of the Norns, keepers of destiny who wove the fates of all beings. His words were a murmur against the rustling of the colossal leaves above, each whisper a leaf in the wind tarrying their hopes and fears. Yggdrasil bears us now, he announced, his voice steadying the nerves of his younger comrades. Respect its paths, for each step takes us through the flow of time and space. As they ascended the nearest route, the scenery around them shifted subtly. The air grew thinner, and the sky seemed to stretch into an impossible vastness. Below them, the realms flickered in and out of sight through breaks in the mist, glimpses of worlds unknown to most mortals. The crossing was not just a physical challenge, but a spiritual trial. Astrid felt the weight of their mission pressing upon her as they traversed the route ways. Her hand tightened around Veilslayer's hilt, the starlight woven into her cloak shimmering in response to the magic saturating the air around them. Bjorn, ever vigilant, kept his eyes on the myriad paths branching off their route, his keen sight catching movements that suggested they were not alone in traveling this nexus. There are watchers in the bows, he whispered, an arrow knocked, but not drawn. We tread upon sacred ground observed by entities unknown. Signy, her shield at the ready, responded with a nod, her gaze sweeping their flanks. Let them watch. We come with the blessing of the gods. Our purpose is just. Leaf, gripping his hammer, added a quiet strength to the group's resolve. Every forge is watched by its master. So too must Yggdrasil have its guardians. We must prove ourselves worthy to pass. The journey across Yggdrasil was a passage through time as much as space. They walked what felt like days within hours. The sun and moon above raced across the sky, marking days that did not pass. Hunger and fatigue seemed held at bay by the tree's magic, their bodies sustained by its ancient power. Finally, they reached the end of the route paths, stepping down onto the solid ground of another realm. They had arrived in Muspelheim, the realm of fire, greeted by the heat of blazing pits and rivers of molten lava, stretching across a fiery landscape. Here, their quest would take them into the heat of creation and destruction, to face the trials of fire and ice. As they prepared to move forward, Astrid looked back at the route of Yggdrasil, a lifeline connecting them to their world and all others. Onward, she commanded, her voice carrying the resonance of one who has walked paths no other mortal has. Our trials await, and with them, the keys to defeating the darkness. With a collective nod, the warriors advanced, their spirits tempered like steel in the forge of their journey, ready to face whatever trials the realms would throw their way. The entrance to Muspelheim was as dramatic as the legends foretold, with rivers of lava creating natural barriers and geysers of flame punctuating the horizon like the breath of the earth. The heat was almost a solid entity, an oppressive force that challenged every step they took into this fiery domain. Astrid led her companions along a narrow path that wound between smoldering rocks and over streams of molten rock, her eyes scanning for the safest route. The air shimmered with heat, distorting the landscape into wavering mirages. Stay close and watch your footing, she cautioned, her voice barely audible over the roar of the flames. Einar, leaning on his staff, murmured incantations to enhance their endurance, the runes on his staff glowing softly under the influence of his magic. Despite the intense heat, the group felt a coolness envelop them, a magical barrier that shielded them from the worst of the fire's bite. As they ventured deeper into Muspelheim, the first trial emerged. A great chasm spanned across their path, the air above it distorted by the heat. A narrow bridge, crafted from hardened magma and looking perilously fragile, was their only way across. Signy stepped forward, her shield raised against the radiant heat. I'll go first. The shield will protect me if the bridge decides to crumble. With measured steps, she began to cross, her every movement watched anxiously by her comrades. Halfway across, a sudden burst of flame shot up from below, a fiery test of courage and agility. Signy reacted instinctively, her shield absorbing the brunt of the blast, allowing her to reach the other side unscathed. With Signy's successful passage as their guide, the rest followed, each using the knowledge of her crossing to navigate the treacherous bridge safely. Once reunited on the other side, they encountered their next trial, a guardian of fire. This creature, a massive salamander cloaked in flames, blocked their path, its eyes glowing with the heat of the forge. Bjorn stepped forward, his bow ready. I'll draw its attention. Be ready to move when it charges. He loosed an arrow, a shaft designed to resist the flames, which struck the salamander squarely. Enraged, the creature charged, but not at Bjorn. It aimed for the groups. Leaf swung his hammer in a wide arc, striking the ground with such force that it created a shockwave, momentarily stunning the beast. Using this opening, Astrid charged, Veilslayer gleaming with a cold light that seemed at odds with the surrounding heat. With a precise strike, she targeted a weak spot beneath the salamander's scales, her blade sinking deep and extinguishing the creature's fiery life. With the guardian defeated, they moved swiftly through the rest of Muspelheim, their trials by fire forging them closer, their teamwork honed to a fine edge. Their journey continued into Niflheim, the realm of ice, where the biting cold replaced the searing heat. Here, the landscape was a stark contrast. Frozen rivers, hoarfrost hanging from every surface, and the air so cold it burned their lungs. The trials in Niflheim were no less challenging. Slippery ice paths, sudden snowstorms, and creatures made of ice and frost tested their physical limits and mental resolve. Yet, with each challenge, their resolve deepened, their unity fortified against the harsh elements of both fire and ice. As they emerged from the icy realm, their bodies weary but spirits undaunted, the companions shared a look of quiet triumph. They had faced the extremes of elemental fury and emerged stronger, more prepared for whatever lay ahead. With the trials of fire and ice behind them, they set their sights on Svartalfheim, the realm of shadows, where they would face their darkest fears made manifest. But for now, they walked together, their breaths forming clouds in the chilly air, their path illuminated by the shared light of their courage and the blessings of the gods. After surviving the extremes of Muspelheim and Niflheim, Astrid and her companions ventured into Svartalfheim, the enigmatic realm of the Dark Elves. Here, the landscape shifted dramatically, a realm cloaked in perpetual twilight, where towering spires and intricate networks of caverns and tunnels dominated. The air was thick with a hush, as if the very atmosphere absorbed sound rather than carried it. The challenges in Svartalfheim were unlike any they had faced before. This realm was not just about confronting physical dangers, but also battling the psychological shadows that lurked in the minds of each warrior. As they delved deeper into the realm, a thick fog began to envelop them, obscuring their vision and disorienting their senses. Whispers echoed through the mist, voices that seemed to dredge up each warrior's deepest fears and darkest memories. Einar, normally so calm and composed, clutched his staff tightly as the whispers grew louder. "These are no ordinary echoes," he cautioned, his voice a low rumble. "They seek to pry into our minds, to unravel us from within." Signy, her hand on the hilt of her sword, squared her shoulders against the encroaching mist. "Let them try," she declared, though her voice betrayed a hint of unease. "We are more than our fears." It was not long before the shadows took shape. Phantoms emerged from the mist, spectral forms that mirrored each warrior's past, a fallen comrade here, a lost family member there, each apparition designed to weaken their resolve. Bjorn faced a vision of his village, burning and under siege, a memory from his childhood that had led him to become a protector. The phantom flames licked at his skin, a heatless fire that nonetheless burned with accusation. "Why did you survive when so many did not?" The voices hissed. With a mighty effort, Bjorn drew an arrow and aimed not at the vision, but at the darkness beyond. "I survived to fight, to protect those who remain," he shouted, loosing the arrow. The vision dissolved as the arrow found its mark, piercing the heart of the illusion. Leaf encountered a different trial, a vision of his forge, but warped and corrupted, his creations used for destruction rather than protection. The sight of his beloved craft turned against him was a cruel twist. With a roar of defiance, he swung his hammer, shattering the vision into fragments of ice and shadow. Astrid's own trial was perhaps the most poignant. She faced her father, or rather, a shadow of him, his image twisted by her own doubts and fears about her worthiness to lead. "You are not ready," the specter of her father intoned, his voice cold and distant. Clutching Veilslayer, Astrid stepped forward, her resolve hardening. I am ready. I was chosen not by birthright, but by worth. With a swift strike, she cleaved the phantom in two, her father's image dissipating into a cloud of mist. With each confrontation, the fog seemed to lighten, the oppressive atmosphere lifting slightly as they conquered their inner demons. Einar, observing this change, nodded in approval. Our fears do not define us. They are but echoes of the past, shadows without substance. Strengthened by their victories over their personal ghosts, the group pressed forward, their bond deepened by the shared experience of facing and overcoming their deepest fears. As they emerged from the fog, the realm of Svartalfheim lay open before them, its secrets ready to be uncovered. But their journey through the shadows was far from over. Ahead lay the realm of Alfheim, where they hoped to gain allies among the Light Elves, whose wisdom would be crucial in understanding the true nature of the dark entity they were tasked to defeat. Leaving the shadowy depths of Svartalfheim behind, Astrid and her band ventured into Alfheim, the luminous realm of the Light Elves. The transition was startling. After the oppressive darkness, Alfheim seemed bathed in perpetual, serene light, with verdant fields stretching under canopies of silver-leaved trees that shimmered with a gentle radiance. The Light Elves, known for their wisdom and ethereal beauty, were initially cautious of the mortal warriors. However, the reputation of the Valkyries and the evident favor of the gods that accompanied Astrid's group soon allayed their suspicions. In the heart of Alfheim, amidst towering trees glowing with bioluminescence, stood the Court of Light, a sprawling structure woven from the very essence of the morning. Here, Astrid sought an audience with Eldrin, the sage king of the Light Elves, whose knowledge of ancient evils was unrivaled. Eldrin received them in a hall where the walls themselves seemed to pulse with a soft light, the air filled with the sweet fragrance of unseen blossoms. His presence was both commanding and graceful, his eyes reflecting the depth of his ancient knowledge. You come seeking allies against the darkness that creeps at the edge of realms, Eldrin stated, his voice musical yet carrying a weight that hinted at his vast experience with such evils. Astrid stepped forward, her posture respectful yet firm. Great King Eldrin, we seek not just allies, but your wisdom. A dark entity threatens all that we hold dear, and without understanding its nature, we cannot hope to defeat it. Eldrin nodded thoughtfully, his gaze drifting towards a large crystal that stood at the center of the hall, glowing with an inner light. The darkness you pursue is old, older, perhaps than even some of the gods themselves. It is a remnant of the chaos that once sought to engulf creation. The elves gathered around, their faces marked with concern. Eldrin continued, this entity, known as the Shadow Veil, was once contained by the combined might of the Azar, but it seems it has found a way to weaken its bonds, drawing strength from the fears and despair of worlds. He turned to his advisors, who brought forth ancient scrolls and tomes. We will aid you, not just with our blades, but with our knowledge. You must understand what you face if you are to have any hope of victory. Over the next days, Astrid and her companions were schooled in the lore of the Shadow Veil. They learned of its weaknesses and its strengths, of the rituals that might weaken it further, and of the allies they could still rally. Eldrin gifted them with light-forged weapons and armor, crafted from the essence of Alfheim itself. These will protect you against the dark magic of the Veil, he explained as his finest smiths presented the gear, each piece gleaming with a light that seemed to pierce the soul. Armed with new weapons and bolstered by new allies, Astrid's resolve hardened. The Light Elves, moved by her determination and the righteousness of their cause, vowed to stand with them in the coming battle. As they prepared to depart Alfheim, the elves bestowed upon them a final gift, a crystal filled with the light of their most sacred dawn. "Should you find yourselves overshadowed by despair," Eldrin said, handing the crystal to Astrid, "let this light remind you that darkness can always be overcome." With hearts lighter than when they had arrived, but with the weight of their task ever present, Astrid and her warriors left the realm of light. Ahead lay the challenges of the midnight sun and the dark lands that bordered the lair of the Shadow Vale. As they marched onward, the unity and purpose forged among them shone as brightly as the weapons at their sides, ready to face whatever trials awaited in their quest to save the realms. As the band of warriors advanced further north, the landscape shifted once again. They entered a realm where the sun hovered perpetually at the horizon, casting an eternal twilight that bathed the land in a surreal, amber glow. This was the land of the midnight sun, a place where time seemed to stand still, and the usual rules of day and night blurred into a continuous golden hour. The beauty of the land, however, belied the dangers it housed. This was the threshold to the lair of the Shadow Vale, and the air was thick with tension. Every shadow seemed to watch them. Every whisper of wind carried a threat. It was here that Astrid and her companions would face one of their greatest battles, before they could even reach the dark entity itself. As they traversed a narrow pass between two snow-capped mountains, the first sign of their impending challenge manifested. A horde of shadow creatures, minions of the Shadow Vale, surged towards them from the dark crevices of the mountainside. These beings were like smoky wraiths, their forms shifting and undulating in the dim light, nearly invisible until they were almost upon the warriors. "Form a circle," Astrid commanded, her voice cutting through the chilling winds. The group quickly complied, backs together, facing outwards to form a barrier no shadow could penetrate without confrontation. Signy, with her enchanted shield, took the front line, her stance as unyielding as the mountains around them. Einar chanted ancient runes that lit up the ground with protective words. Bjorn's arrows flew with deadly precision, each one finding its mark in the heart of a shadow creature, dissolving them into mist. Leif swung his hammer in wide arcs, each blow sending shockwaves through the ranks of the advancing shadows, disrupting their forms. Despite their valiant defense, the sheer number of enemies threatened to overwhelm them. It was then that Astrid, holding the crystal gifted by the Light Elves, made a decision. She thrust the crystal into the ground, where it embedded itself firmly. A brilliant light erupted from it, rays piercing through the darkness like spears of pure dawn. The shadows recoiled as if burned, their forms dissipating under the onslaught of light. The warriors took advantage of this, pressing forward with renewed vigor, driving the remnants of the horde back into the shadows from which they had come. As the last of the shadow creatures vanished, the crystal's light dimmed, its energy spent. They retrieved it, its glow now a soft pulse, a reminder of the Light Elves' aid and the power of unity against darkness. Breathing heavily, the companions regrouped, their eyes on one another confirming their readiness to continue. This battle had tested their strength and their newly acquired weapons, proving both to be formidable. This land might be beautiful, but it is filled with deception, Einar observed, his eyes scanning the horizon. Let us not be fooled by the calm after the storm. The true challenge lies ahead. Astrid nodded, her gaze fixed on the north, where the land dipped into shadows so deep they seemed to swallow the light itself. This was but a precursor to what awaits us. We must remain vigilant and unite. The Shadow Vale is close, and it surely knows we are coming. Their resolve hardened by the encounter, the group moved forward, the land around them quiet once again, as if holding its breath. The battle under the midnight sun had brought them closer, each trial forging their bonds stronger, each victory a testament to their growing legend. As they walked, the endless twilight lingered, a constant companion in this land of surreal beauty and lurking dangers. Their hearts set on the trials yet to come, and the destiny they were determined to fulfill. As the golden light of the midnight sun continued to cast its eternal glow, the air around the warriors grew heavier, laden with the weight of impending destiny. Their path led them through an ancient frozen forest, where the trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with snow. It was here, amidst the stillness and the isolation of the far north, that each member of the party faced a personal reckoning. The journey had been long and fraught with peril, drawing out the strengths and vulnerabilities of each warrior. As they made camp one evening, under the watchful eyes of towering ice-clad pines, Einar suggested they share their stories. Not just the tales of heroism that others whispered in awe, but the truths of their sorrows and regrets. Astrid, understanding the wisdom in his suggestion, nodded in agreement. To face what lies ahead, we must confront what we carry within us. Let this night be for unburdening. Signy was the first to speak, her voice a low thrum against the crackling of the campfire. I wield my shield not only against my enemies but against my own memories. I lost my sister in a raid, her life taken by a marauder's blade while I could only watch, helpless. Every battle since has been a chance to redeem that moment, though I know some moments can never be reclaimed. Her confession hung in the air, a shared pain that echoed in the hearts of her comrades. Bjorn, normally reserved and stoic, took up the thread. I hunt not for the glory of the kill, but for the peace it brings me. The village I failed to save haunts me. Each arrow loosed a penance. My past is a forest, littered with ghosts. Leaf, his large hands turned palms up to the fire, revealing scars long faded, shared his own truth. The forge is my sanctuary, not only from the world, but from my thoughts. I was not born a smith, but became one after the war that took my family. Each hammer strike is a word in my ongoing conversation with those I lost. Einar, listening intently to each story, finally turned his gaze inward. As a seer, I am cursed not only to foresee the futures of others, but to be constantly reminded of my own failures to change those that mattered most. My gift is also my greatest burden, for knowledge does not always yield the power to alter fate. Lastly, Astrid stood, her eyes reflecting the flames as she faced her companions. I was raised on tales of heroes and gods, always believing destiny was something glorious. I never expected it to be so heavy, so filled with doubt. Vayslayer, my inheritance and my charge, represents not only my duty to fight, but my fear that I might not be worthy of the legends that precede me. The sharing of their stories, raw and unvarnished, brought them closer than any battle had. They understood now that their strengths were forged not in spite of their sorrows and fears, but because of them. Each warrior, in revealing their vulnerabilities, found not judgment, but a deeper bond with their comrades. With their personal revelations laid bare, the group found new strength in their shared vulnerability. As the fire died down to embers, and the light of dawn began to mingle with the glow of the midnight sun, they rose together, not just as warriors on a quest, but as companions bound by heart and spirit. As they broke camp, their steps were lighter, their resolve firmer. The path ahead would lead them into the heart of darkness, to the eve of shadows, where they would need all the unity and strength they could muster. On the eve of their final confrontation, the landscape around them transformed once more, growing darker, the eternal twilight of the midnight sun swallowed by creeping shadows that seemed to drain the color from the world. They had reached the outskirts of the dark entity's lair, a realm where the fabric of reality thinned, and the air was thick with the oppressive power of the shadow veil. The camp they set up was somber, Each member of the group was acutely aware of what the next day would bring. Around the flickering campfire, under a sky that seemed to roil with dark anticipation, Astrid convened a final council to discuss their strategy. The Shadow Veil is strongest at the heart of its domain, Einar began, unrolling an ancient map marked with runes and lines that seemed to pulse with a faint light. We must disrupt its source of power, the Dark Nexus, to weaken it sufficiently. Leaf, examining the array of weapons and artifacts they had gathered throughout their journey, nodded in agreement. The light-forged weapons from Alfheim will be crucial. They can penetrate the Shadow's defenses. My hammer can focus the energies of the other artifacts, if we can get close enough. Bjorn, who had been quietly checking his equipment, looked up. I can provide cover with my arrows. They've been blessed by the light elves and should hold back the lesser shadows while we advance. Signy, her shield at the ready, added, I will take the vanguard. My shield can absorb much of the dark magic, protecting us as we move towards the Nexus. Astrid listened to each plan, her mind racing through scenarios and strategies. Finally, she spoke, her voice resolute. We have come far and faced much. Tomorrow we face not just the Shadow Veil but also the culmination of our own fears and doubts. We fight not only for the realms, but for each other. The plan set, the group spent the remainder of the evening in quiet preparation, sharpening blades, inscribing last-minute runes, and reinforcing their armor. The air around them crackled with the tension of impending battle. Yet within their circle, there was a palpable sense of camaraderie and determination. Later, as the others settled into their tents for a few hours of rest, Astrid walked a short distance away from the camp, her gaze turned towards the dark horizon. She held Veilslayer before her, its blade catching the faint light of the distant midnight sun. Freya, she whispered into the chill air, you chose me for this task. Grant me the strength to see it through. The wind seemed to carry her words away, towards the heavens, and for a moment the oppressive darkness lightened, as if in acknowledgement of her plea. Returning to the camp, Astrid found her companions not asleep but gathered around the dying fire, each lost in their thoughts yet together in spirit. Joining them, she felt the weight of leadership ease slightly, buoyed by the trust and strength of her friends. We face the dawn together, she said softly, meeting each of their eyes in turn. No matter what happens, I could not have asked for finer warriors to stand with. The night passed slowly, filled with the deep pulsing heartbeat of the dark realm. As the first light of true dawn finally began to break, the warriors rose, donning their gear and readying themselves for what was to come. With a final, shared look of determination, they stepped out from the camp, their figures silhouetted against the lightening sky, moving as one towards the heart of darkness, towards destiny. The eve of shadows had ended, and the day of reckoning had begun. Chapter 3. The Veil Falls. The dawn was unlike any other, tinged with a heaviness that seemed to press against the very air Astrid and her companions breathed. Before them lay the abyss, a gaping maw in the earth that led to the lair of the Shadow Veil. The path down was treacherous, winding through jagged rocks and steep drops, all shrouded in an unnatural darkness that seemed to swallow light whole. Astrid led the way, Veilslayer gripped tightly in her hand, its blade emitting a faint glow that fought bravely against the oppressive gloom. The path was narrow, forcing them to move in a single file, each step a test of trust and balance. The darkness here is thick enough to cut, Signy murmured, her shield raised against the unseen dangers that lurked in the shadows. Einar, following close behind with his staff aglow with protective runes, nodded. This is no ordinary darkness. It is imbued with the essence of the Shadow Veil itself. Stay As they descended deeper into the abyss, the air grew colder, and a low, ominous rumble echoed around them. Without warning, the ground beneath their feet shuddered violently, a tremor that sent small rocks cascading down into the darkness below. "Steady," Leaf called out, his voice calm despite the shaking ground. "We must be nearing the source of its power." The path eventually leveled out, opening into a vast cavern that sprawled in all directions. Here, the darkness seemed even more intense, if that were possible. The cavern was a maze of towering stalagmites and deep crevices that split the ground like open wounds. Bjorn, his eyes scanning the shadows, nocked an arrow to his bow. "We are not alone," he whispered. An echoing growl confirmed his words, and from the shadows emerged creatures of pure darkness, their forms shifting and undulating like smoke. The battle was swift and fierce. Astrid and her companions fought back to back, their weapons a dance of light in the suffocating darkness. Signy's shield absorbed the brunt of the shadow creatures' attacks, while Leaf's hammer sent shockwaves through the ranks of their enemies, scattering them like leaves in a storm. With each fallen shadow, the air in the cavern lightened slightly, as if each creature carried a portion of the darkness within it. After what felt like hours, the last of the shadows dissipated, leaving the group exhausted but unbroken. "We must find the Dark Nexus," Einar said, catching his breath. "It is the source of the Shadow Veil's power. Destroying it is our only chance." Guided by Einar's visions and Astrid's unwavering determination, they navigated the cavern's treacherous terrain towards the heart of the abyss. The path was fraught with peril, each step a gamble in the uneven light. Finally, they stood before a towering obelisk that pulsed with a dark energy. The Dark Nexus. It stood surrounded by a moat of what appeared to be pure shadow, its surface swirling with whispers of despair and malice. Astrid stepped forward. "Veilslayer, this ends here," she declared, her voice echoing through the cavern. "For our realms, for our fallen, and for the light." Together, they prepared for the final confrontation, their hearts beating as one, their spirits united in a single cause. The battle to end the reign of the Shadow Veil was about to begin. Standing before the Dark Nexus, the imposing obelisk that seemed to draw the very light out of the air around it, Astrid and her companions braced themselves for what would come next. The ground beneath the Nexus began to shift, opening up to reveal a downward spiral, a labyrinthine descent that promised more trials. "This is the labyrinth of despair," Einar whispered, his voice tinged with unease. "Legend says it is a place that not only tests one's bravery, but also one's soul." The entrance beckoned with an eerie silence, the walls lined with carvings that seemed to shift when not being directly looked at. The path was narrow and fraught with traps and puzzles, each designed to thwart and test the resolve of any who dared to traverse it. As they entered the labyrinth, the first challenge presented itself. A hall of mirrors that distorted not only their reflections, but also the path forward. Images of their greatest failures and fears flashed across the surfaces, attempting to draw them into a maze of self-doubt. Astrid faced a reflection of herself as a child, lost and alone in a forest, a reminder of the time she had doubted her ability to survive. Shaking her head, she declared, "These are just shadows of what was, not what will be." With a firm slash of Veilslayer, the mirror shattered, clearing a part of the true path forward. Signy confronted a vision of her sister, fallen in battle, her voice echoing, "Why didn't you save me?" With a pained roar, Signy smashed the mirror with her shield, her resolve hardening. "I fight now to protect all like you," she affirmed, her voice thick with unshed tears, but steady with purpose. One by one, they faced their fears, Life saw his creations used for destruction. Bjorn relived the loss of his village, and Einar saw a vision of himself too old and frail to aid his friends. Each challenge was met with a mixture of courage and a deepening understanding of themselves and each other. The labyrinth tested their physical limits as well. Puzzles requiring a combination of strength, intellect, and teamwork slowed their progress. One particularly daunting puzzle involved a massive stone door with runes that needed to be pressed in a specific sequence to open. It's the story of Yggdrasil and the 9 realms, Einar realized. Studying the runes, we must press them in the order that the realms were said to be discovered by the gods. With careful coordination, they solved the puzzle, the door grinding open to reveal the deeper parts of the labyrinth. As they ventured further, the air grew colder, the shadows deeper. The path became more treacherous, with pitfalls and sudden drops that required quick reflexes and quicker thinking to navigate. At last they emerged from the labyrinth into a vast chamber, where the dark nexus loomed even larger, its presence overwhelming. The air here was thick with malice, the shadows writhing more aggressively as if sensing that its end was near. "This is it," Astrid said, her voice echoing off the cavern walls. "The heart of the shadow veils power. Whatever happens, know that I could not have asked for braver souls to stand with." Gathering their strength, they prepared for the confrontation with the dark entity itself, knowing that the fate of not just their realms, but of all realms, hung in the balance. The battle to end the darkness was about to begin, and in their hearts, they carried not just the hope of victory, but the certainty that their bonds would see them through. In the vast chamber that housed the dark nexus, the air was thick with a palpable sense of malice. As the warriors prepared for what they knew would be their greatest battle, the darkness seemed to pulse with anticipation, sensing their resolve and their fears. Astrid stepped forward, her hand on the hilt of Veilslayer, her resolve as strong as the blade itself. But as they approached the nexus, the shadows around them began to coalesce, forming into figures and faces that each warrior recognized all too well, their deepest regrets and fears given form. Astrid faced the figure of her father once again, not as she had seen him in Svartalfheim, but as he had been on his deathbed, his eyes filled with worry. "I fear for you, Astrid," the apparition spoke, his voice echoing the doubts that had haunted her since their journey began. "Have you the strength to end what you have begun?" Instead of drawing her sword, Astrid reached out, her hand passing through the spectral image. "I am more than my fear," she declared firmly. "I am the sum of every trial I have faced, every battle I have won. You taught me that strength is not the absence of doubt, but the resolve to face it." Beside her, Signy confronted the image of her sister again. But this time, she did not react with anger or sorrow. She spoke softly to the apparition, her voice steady. "Your death taught me the cost of war, and I carry it with me. But I fight now so others do not face the same fate. Your memory drives me, not to revenge, but to protect." Leif faced his own ghost, those who had fallen by weapons he had crafted, twisted by evil. "I crafted with hope for peace," he told the figures that accused him, "and I will continue to forge, to create, so that these tools might protect, not destroy. I reclaim my creations in the name of light." Bjorn, too, faced the villagers he couldn't save, their shadows looming over him. Drawing his bow, he addressed them with a calm resolve. "I carry your memories, not as burdens, but as reminders of the value of vigilance and strength. With each arrow loosed, I honor you, not in vengeance but in defense of life." Einar, surrounded by visions of his past predictions that had led to sorrow, raised his staff. "The future is ever fluid," he intoned, his voice echoing around the chamber. Each step we take alters it. I choose now to make a future where hope reigns, where darkness is turned back. As each warrior confronted and accepted their past, the apparitions began to fade, dissolving into the air like mist at dawn. The chamber grew lighter, the oppressive weight of their doubts lifting. With their spirits cleansed and united stronger than ever, they turned to face the dark nexus, now pulsing more erratically, as if in response to their newfound resolve. Astrid raised Veilslayer, its blade gleaming even in the dim light of the chamber. Together, she called to her companions, who rallied to her side, their own weapons ready. For all the realms, for all who have fallen, we end this now. As they charged towards the nexus, the shadows writhed in desperation, forming a last line of defense. But the warriors, their hearts lightened and their resolve unbreakable, pressed forward, ready to bring an end to the darkness. With renewed courage and the weight of their past lifted, Astrid and her companions advanced toward the pulsating heart of darkness, the dark nexus. As they neared, the air thickened, charged with malevolent energy. The shadows around the nexus swirled more violently, coalescing into a towering figure of pure darkness. The physical manifestation of the shadow veil itself, the entity was a roiling mass of shadow and malice, its form ever-changing, its eyes, deep wells of abyssal fire, fixed upon Astrid and her warriors. It spoke in a voice that was a cacophony of whispers, each syllable dripping with venom. You dare to challenge the darkness with mere flickers of light. I am eternal, as old as fear and despair. Astrid stepped forward, Veilslayer in hand, her voice ringing clear and true. We are the light that will pierce your shadows. For every heart that beats in hope, for every soul that yearns for dawn, we will defy you. The battle that ensued was fierce and chaotic. The dark entity lashed out with tendrils of shadow, each strike seeking to snuff out their lives like candles in a tempest. The warriors dodged and weaved, their weapons a blur of motion, each strike against the shadow sending ripples of light through the dark. Signy's shield blazed with radiant energy, absorbing the dark strikes that threatened to overwhelm them. Bjorn's arrows, each tipped with light-forged steel, found their mark again and again, piercing the shadow's armor. Leif swung his hammer with the strength of the mountains, each impact sending shockwaves through the nexus, fracturing the cohesion of the shadow. Einar, his staff raised, chanted incantations that wove barriers of light around them, deflecting the darker spells cast by the entity. Meanwhile, Astrid moved with a dancer's grace, Veilslayer cutting arcs of silver fire through the air, each strike weakening the entity's form. As the battle wore on, the entity seemed to grow desperate, its attacks becoming more erratic but also more dangerous. It expanded, its shadows enveloping the chamber, threatening to extinguish the light they bore. It was then that Einar spotted a pattern in the chaos, a rhythm to the entity's expansions and contractions, like a heartbeat. He shouted over the din of battle, "Astrid, the nexus, strike it when it pulses." Each timing her movements with the pulsing of the dark nexus, Astrid gathered her strength for a final assault. As the nexus expanded once more, she charged forward, the light from Veilslayer blazing like a star. With a mighty cry, she thrust the sword deep into the heart of the shadow. The impact sent a shock wave of light rippling outwards, illuminating every corner of the chamber. The dark entity gave a terrible scream, its form shattering into 1,000 whispers of darkness that faded away like mist under the morning sun. As the light settled, the chamber was calm. The oppressive energy that had choked the air was gone, replaced by a serene quiet. The dark nexus, once a font of shadow, now lay dormant, its dark energy extinguished. The warriors, exhausted but unbroken, gathered around Astrid, who stood with Veilslayer still raised, its blade glowing softly now. Their eyes met, and in each other's gazes, they saw not just fellow warriors, but family, bound by a journey that had changed them all. "We have done it," Astrid breathed out, a smile breaking across her face. "The darkness is defeated." Together, they turned to leave the chamber, their hearts light with the triumph of light over darkness, ready to return to a world that awaited their stories. The chamber, now calm and filled with a serene light, seemed a sanctuary compared to the battleground it had been moments ago. The warriors gathered their strength, their relief palpable in the air. However, as they prepared to leave, a faint pulsing began to emanate from the remains of the dark nexus. The battle was not over. The shadow, though vastly weakened, was making a final, desperate attempt to revive itself. Einar, sensitive to the shifts in magical energies, was the first to notice. His expression dark. "It's not over," he warned, his voice urgent. "The Nexus is trying to rebuild itself. If we leave it now, the darkness will rise again." Astrid approached the Nexus, Veilslayer in hand, observing the slow rhythmic pulsing of dark energy. "Then we end it for good. We destroy the Nexus Leaf, examining the structure, shook his head. "It's not that simple. The energy within is too dense, too potent. To destroy it completely, it would require a sacrifice, a life willingly given to break the cycle permanently." The words hung heavy in the air, a somber echo to their victory. Each warrior looked from one to another, the weight of the decision anchoring their feet to the ground. It was Bjorn who stepped forward first, his expression resolute. "I will do it," he said simply. "My life for the realms, for peace. It's an archer's final mark." Astrid reached out, grabbing his arm. "No, Bjorn. There has to be another way. We can find it together." But Einar intervened, his voice gentle. "Astrid, he is right. The Nexus requires a life force to counterbalance the dark energy within. Bjorn's offer is noble, and while it breaks my heart, it is the only way." The decision was painful, and tears mingled with the dirt and blood on their faces as they came to accept Bjorn's choice. They gathered around him, each expressing their gratitude and sorrow. Bjorn, with a final nod to each of his friends, turned to Astrid. "Lead them well, my chief. Remember, light can only shine where there is darkness to be overcome." With that, he approached the Nexus, laying his hands upon the cold, dark stone. The shadows within stirred, sensing the life force offered to them. Bjorn closed his eyes, a soft glow beginning around him as he began the final chant, a spell of sealing taught to him by Einar. The glow intensified, enveloping Bjorn in the Nexus, the light and dark energies swirling in a dance as old as time. The others turned away, unable to watch as the light burst forth in a blinding flash, the ground shaking beneath their feet. When they looked back, the Nexus was gone, disintegrated into nothingness. Where Bjorn had stood, there was only a small crystal, pulsing with a soft light, a remnant of his sacrifice and his spirit. Astrid picked up the crystal, tears streaming down her face. "He will not be forgotten. None of this will be forgotten." With heavy hearts, the warriors made their way back through the labyrinth, each step a testament to their loss, but also to their resolve. The darkness had been defeated, the balance restored, but at a great cost. As they emerged from the depths of the abyss, the world above seemed brighter, the air fresher, as if it too recognized the sacrifice that had been made. Emerging from the depths of the abyss, the warriors felt the warmth of the sun on their faces, a stark contrast to the cold darkness they had faced below. The world seemed to breathe a sigh of relief with them. The balance restored, the shadow veil vanquished. Its threat dissolved into the annals of legend from which it had once risen. Astrid, holding the small crystal that contained the last essence of Bjorn, led her companions back through the realms they had traveled. Each step homeward was bittersweet, marked by the absence of their fallen friend, but also by the triumph of their mission. They had faced unimaginable darkness and emerged victorious, but not unscathed. As they passed through Alfheim, the Light Elves came forth to meet them, their faces solemn as they paid their respects to the heroes. King Eldrin himself approached Astrid, his expression one of deep sorrow mixed with gratitude. "You have done what many believed impossible," Eldrin spoke, his voice echoing softly through the trees. "The realms owe you a debt of gratitude. Your friend's sacrifice will be remembered as long as the stars shine." The elves held a ceremony in honor of Bjorn and of all the warriors. Songs were sung that lifted the spirits of the weary travelers, filling the air with melodies that spoke of courage, sacrifice, and hope. The Light Elves bestowed gifts upon each of them, amulets that glowed with the essence of Alfheim, to protect and remind them of the light that endures in the darkest of times. As they continued their journey through the realms, every place they visited showed signs of recovery. In Muspelheim, the fire giants expressed their respect with a display of volcanic fireworks that lit the sky. In Niflheim, the frost giants granted them safe passage, their icy demeanor softened by the heroes' deeds. Finally, they returned to Midgard, to their own realm, where the people celebrated their return as the bearers of a new era of peace. Stories of their journey spread far and wide, sung by bards and written in the scrolls of scholars, tales to inspire generations. Astrid stood before her people, her heart heavy yet proud. "We have faced the darkness not to conquer it, but to understand it. We return not as mere survivors, but as beacons of a light that no shadow can extinguish. Let us remember those who sacrifice in the silence of the shadows, so that we might live in the light." As the celebrations continued around them, the warriors felt a deep sense of fulfillment, mingled with the ache of their losses. They had changed the course of history, not through conquest, but through courage and sacrifice. The triumph of light was not just the end of darkness, but the beginning of a new understanding, a new respect for the balance between light and shadow, and the role each plays in the tapestry of life.